This episode of Breakthrough Success is brought to you by Jobber. Jobber is your business command center. The easy-to-use app powers your sales, operations, and customer service all in one place. Go check them out at getjobber.com/im/breakthrough to receive 20% off your first 6 months. What's up, Breakthrough Success listeners? Marc Guberti, the podcasting coach here, helping people launch, grow, and monetize their podcast. And when it comes to starting a podcast or any business venture, we get super excited about the business. We put in the work, we put in the hours. The issue, though, is self-care, something we don't do enough of. And we have a really awesome guest who knows a lot about self-care, finding the time to make it happen, different ways for us to care for ourselves better. So today's guest, a little more about him. He launched Music Care Inc., a for-profit corporation dedicated to teaching practical ways music can be used for self-care. His work was recognized by the National Council for Behavioral Health with an Award of Excellence in 2014, the behavioral health equivalent of winning an Oscar. So big kudos to you. Our guest for this episode of Breakthrough Success is none other than Bill Protzmann. Bill, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mark. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Bill, I'm so happy to have you on Breakthrough Success. And one of the things that's so important is self-care, as we hit on a little earlier in that intro. Can you share with us a little bit, because I know music is your big avenue for the self-care. So can you share with us how you got started there and found the connection to self-care?
Sure. So I'm basically an IT guy trapped in the body of a piano player. And having played piano for longer than I've been in IT, I can tell you it's been my behavioral health care. Music has just been there for me. And when you practice using music to express emotion, that's powerful. As a musician, I do that, but anybody can practice music and emotion in the same space. So the way that works for me is when I allow those emotions to come up, and whether I'm just listening or performing, allowing the emotion without having to act out on it is an incredibly powerful thing, because you can go through fear, you can go through anger, sadness, of course, and joy, and allowing them to come up and be fully present with you gives you this amazing power to choose what to feel next. And, we guys, we're taught to stuff emotions, and we do that pretty well. I mean, there's places where you can express those emotions openly, like axe throwing here in San Diego. We actually have axe throwing, mixed martial arts, whatever. You can get really physical with this stuff. But just letting it come up and letting it flow through, and then putting yourself in that presence of saying, oh man, I really felt bad. And then being open to the next thing is a really powerful practice that, being a musician anyway, has saved me more than once. And I've discovered other people can do that too, either through just remembering the music or listening to it or humming a tune or whatever. There's so many ways to engage with this modality that's evidence-based and safe and just really incredible, provided we take it out of the background and bring it up in the foreground where we can use it.
Yeah, and I definitely agree on the music piece, because I used to do the piano a lot. Definitely don't do it as much as I did now, but during moments of stress, playing the piano, it's definitely it's release. It's I obviously want to get better at it at the time. Still a little side thing, but it definitely helps to have that music in play, regardless of what kind of instrument or how you're producing the music. I know some people, they may not be in the music world yet, so I'm wondering if there's other ways that we can practice self-care, because I feel like whether you play an instrument or do music or not, self-care is something you need to be doing for yourself to grow your business without having a breakdown.
Oh yeah, seriously, the internet is driving us harder than we've ever been driven in the past. And having lived on both sides of that, I can tell you that IT, before the internet, was the dark ages compared to the way it is now. There's so much you can do. And a lot of us are simply leveraging the power of the internet to do what we used to do faster, better, more frequently, more productively, all of that. But hey, we're human. And we've got to take care of the human part of us as much as possible. And I don't mean self-help. Great, go to a spa vacation, whatever it is that you do for self-help, fantastic. But when it comes to self-care, we're talking about taking care of yourself mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And there's only a few modalities that have evidence behind them that support that. If you do yoga or if you meditate, those things in combination are a holistic modality for self-care. Music is a holistic modality for self-care. even when it comes to physical, because if you're listening to music, the science is that you don't need as many pain medications. You don't need as much stress medication. You don't need, and do we have a pain and stress medication problem right now? Yes. It's not one that we want, but we have built-in abilities to respond to music in a way that can relieve our pain, that can relieve our stress, as you mentioned, that can help us heal faster if we're injured. And of course, it can mind us mentally and emotionally too. That's one of the beautiful sort of calming effects of music, to allow those emotions to come up, allow them to play, and then they just sort of leave us more gently than if we hang on to them.
I want to tell you about a really awesome resource called Skillshare. Skillshare is a place where you can find an online training course in virtually any subject. They've got tens of thousands of training courses on their platform, including 30 of my own. So if you're looking for a way to start your own podcast, if you're looking for a way to launch your social media ads, if you're looking for a way to become a better investor, Skillshare has a ton of courses on those topics, all sitting there and waiting for you. And you can get 2 free months of Skillshare over at Skillshare.com/breakthrough. So definitely use that coupon. Let's give Skillshare a lot of engagement. Yeah, and that is a really great point. I mean, the self-care, it is something that, it's time we have to devote to ourselves. And I feel like some people, they see it as a sign of weakness if you're deep in the grind. I don't get that philosophy, but I know some people do. And there are other people who they're so busy caring for others that when they think about caring for themselves, they think it's selfish. So how can we feel fine about doing self-care with these different opinions and philosophies floating around that I mentioned just earlier?
It's a tough call. We used to talk about work-life balance, back in the day, and they're still talking about that. But I think for all of us right now, the challenge is how much effort we put into our flat screens versus how much effort we put into our 3D presence and being. And Silicon Valley is leading the way on this, where they're not giving cell phones to their kids anymore because of certain addictive properties and potentially visually impacting and other things that you don't want to have slowing your development. Well, the good news is that we are malleable. We can change. There's neuroplasticity. You can even change the way that your brain is wired. That's really cool. And we need to be able to use those kinds of scientific evidence in a way that lets us stay ahead of the game without experiencing burnout. There's no reason you shouldn't have to experience burnout today. There's so many ways to avoid that. But taking that time, that's really hard. I mean, we're all busy. And here I am, an advocate for music. And what does music do? It stops you. It slows you down. You have to sit there and listen or dance or whatever it is that you're doing. But you need to experience the music without anything else going on to get the biggest pop from it. You can't multitask over music.
Yeah.
The music's going to be there. It's going to be in the background. It's going to be bugging you, that part of you that listens deeply, the lizard brain. It's going to be bugging that part of you. And if you're doing something that's not in sync with that music, you're fighting yourself. And why? Right? Take 5 minutes. But here's the thing with some practice. You don't have to even take the 5 minutes. We all know songs, right? You can think of songs right now. You may not sing them, but they're in your head.
Yeah.
And as you remember those songs in your head, they're songs you love, or they wouldn't be there. Guess what happens? Physiologically, we respond to that music that we remember the same way that we would respond if it was playing in the room. So you can give yourself that instantaneous pop, provided that you've done some practice on it, that you've taught yourself how to respond to that thing. And you know innately what that is. You just have to put it on and say, oh yeah, well, this makes me feel a little bit agitated. Remember that song? Whenever I need agitation support, bang, it's there. And the self-care process is almost instantaneous. But it does take some practice to train yourself to be in that place, to allow that effect.
And it is interesting. Bill does bring up a point. I feel like we know this, but we don't really take action on it, where there are songs that trigger different responses, and some music can really help us if we have it playing at the right time. So being able to think about what resonates with us based on certain emotional feelings we may have, what's the best thing to be listening to. And I feel like this is something to think about now rather than when you're in the moment. Because when you're in the moment with stress or anger, or whatever it is, your mind's going to be all fogged up and you're not going to be making as good decisions. So it's good to be thinking about those kinds of things with a clear mind. And one of the things that I do want to ask you is, I love asking this to everyone because like habits to me are so important. So I'm wondering if you could share with us, what are some of the habits that have helped you achieve the success that you have achieved?
Wow, great question. So the discipline of being a classical piano player when you're growing up is really hard. I mean, it sucks to be inside practicing when you want to be outside, hanging with your friends. But that discipline has other aspects to it that are really important. My mom was my first piano teacher, and she continued to teach little kids, a lot of them that had behavioral issues like ADHD and acting out and just stuff like that. But with practice, those kids could go and sit at the piano for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and make music. And that discipline of learning that you can bring your entire presence to an activity, and music is an activity that engages us in all 5 senses and more, you can translate that practice over into other aspects of your life. So when I learned to play the piano, I was also learning a life skill. Learning the discipline of how to make something properly happen in my hands repetitively over time. Anybody who's learned to type can relate to that, although I don't type, I understand, right? And you really have to practice that, like learning a language, to be able to be fluent enough in it, to be convincing. And then, of course, those life skills are staying with you. And music is this remarkable thing. It teaches us how to see more carefully. It teaches us how to listen, because you can hear the difference between a lousy sound and a good one. It teaches us what that feels like in your fingertips. You can feel that vibration in the pianos. All these things come together in a way that is very important for life, because as you progress through life as a musician, you're listening more carefully. And your emotional intelligence, I really don't like using those words, but your emotional intelligence is sort of built in because you've been practicing expression of the emotions using your instrument in a way that is authentic and communicates to other people. So those are life skills. And once you recognize what's going on there and you get into a conversation, it changes the way that you interact. Like it changes the way that you and me are interacting, Mark. I can't go back to the old way anymore. It's so old. I don't even remember what it is now. But those disciplines are very important. And they, of course, translate on because you do better in school. People say, well, musicians, they're that. But training your brain holistically, the left and the right side together like that, and building that pathway, the corpus callosum between the two hemispheres, that happens when you're a musician. And it happens whatever age you're at when you do that. That's an amazing skill. And of course, that's great for inspiration and problem solving and stuff in the business world. It builds empathy too. So if you're raising a family or you have a significant other and you want to relate to that person or those people more authentically, that's an important part of it. And we're all into authenticity these days. So, fire up your music. Who was it? Was it, I want to say Edison. It's not Edison. It was Einstein, who was talking about how we can't solve today's problems with the thinking that got us there. Yeah. We have to radically change our thinking. Musicians, artists, people who work off their right brain, we're radical thinkers. We're not really disruptors because we're pretty much introverts. But if you thought about it for a second and said, okay, so the world we have today is based on the thinking that got us here, obviously, and the problems we have today can't be solved with that same thinking. What are you going to do? I mean, if you're an internet marketer and you've totally hit it out of the park, and you can sell anything to anyone at scale, fantastic. But what if the problem is that you're selling anything to anyone at scale? I mean, you're putting a roof over your head and all that and whatever, but that's the thinking that's got us to where we are now. And we have this incredible income inequality that's just spiked since the internet. That's not so great for society at large, but a lot of people, well, a marginally small number of them that have all the wealth are starting to think about it. Like, this accumulation isn't serving the world. What do we have to do to unwind from that? Nobody knows what we have to do, but it's going to be a different thing than what got us there, right? Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with success. Go for it, man. Just everybody who's listening to this, just do everything you possibly can, but be prepared because you're going to be challenged. When you get to that level of dissatisfaction, all the money in the world and you're still not satisfied, what's wrong with that, right? There's something else there that's a challenge for you to find. And it's not just doing the next thing faster or doing the old things even better. It's doing something brand new where there's no charts and no maps and no MIT professor with a book on entrepreneurism. It's like we've got to go out there cold, and we've got to go out there present. And there's nothing like music to engage us in full presence and help us solve those problems that we created without full presence in the past.
Bill, those are some really awesome habits and also some really good insights, because I do feel like if we work on creating something new, I know in the business world it's the equivalent of going into the blue oceans instead of the red oceans. That's going to really help you with success and also with self-care, because that is a great area for us to focus on to achieve success in all the different facets of life. For people wondering where can they find your work and learn more about you, where are some good places we can find you?
It's really easy. You don't have to even worry about spelling my name, but it'll be in the show notes. I like to send people to a site called quest.musiccare.net. Quest the old-fashioned way, like Quest for the Holy Grail, Quest, and .musiccare.net. Also be in the show notes. But there's an opportunity here to really engage with things that have supported us so well in the past. I've noticed a sort of trend in the business world back toward the basics, and we're talking like Epictetus and Stoicism, and even Tim Ferriss talks about this. And music is as basic as it gets, man. When we were first making music, we were hollering at each other and banging on rocks or whatever. We did that to be able to get ideas across. And those are good tools. They haven't been used that way in a long time, at least in America. There are in other places, but we could turn back to some of those fundamental tools and see how they integrate for us and whether they speed things along. So the Quest is a way to do that. And you're invited to go for it. It'll change your life. It's a big deal, and it takes a long time to complete. And that's on purpose, folks. You really have to slow down and dig into this. You can't get it in a 10-minute YouTube video.
Well, we'll definitely include all those links in the show notes. We'll also include a link if anyone wants to schedule a free strategy call with me, see how they can launch, grow, monetize a podcast, or with help on YouTube, marcguberti.com/strategy for anyone who's interested. Bill, thank you so much for taking the time to come on Breakthrough Success. It was such a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here. Good luck.
This episode of Breakthrough Success was brought to you by Jobber. Jobber is your business's command center. The easy-to-use app powers your sales, operations, and customer service all in one place. Start a free trial or sign up today to receive 20% off your first 6 months over at getjobber.com/im/breakthrough.